Welcome to a very special edition with a very long intro that turned out to be of Stranded in Pittsburgh. It's Nick, it's Ethan, Nate Breisinger is on assignment. We're very excited to be here this week talking about something that about a month ago seemed like a very, very far fetched idea, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers, by some grace of God, have made the NFL playoffs and will be competing against the Buffalo Bills, who have had a hell of a season themselves and are a team that I'll say it right off the bat here before anything gets clipped, before anything happens. I am a big fan, not like a fan like I buy their jerseys and apparel, but the Bills are a team that I love to root for. Being from Erie, PA originally, out of Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and Buffalo. A lot of people, I think, don't know this, but Buffalo is technically the closest to Erie. So I have a ton of Buffalo family and friends. And if they do end up bouncing the Steelers, I'm going to root for Buffalo the rest of the way. So let's get that out right off the bat before I jump into some Steelers propaganda. But before you hear more of my rambling, that stud next to me, Ethan, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing well. Like you said, Nick, we didn't think that this Steelers team would be in the position that they're in. A month ago when we had our Christmas spectacular, everything seemed to be going downhill for the Steelers there, but really just the past 3 weeks for them, they've just turned it around, and it was really improbable what they did and how they were able to come together as a team and pull off the 3 wins that they did in dominating fashion, two of them. And just to see in the position where they're at now, it's hard to bet against them, especially with the way that they've been playing, except for last week in that monsoon that they were playing in Baltimore. So it's going to be a really interesting matchup on Sunday, especially since the Bills have not been playing their best ball as of late. Obviously, getting the win against Miami on the road to get the AFC East title on the road and becoming the 2 seed. But I think it's going to be a very entertaining matchup against two really, really good teams. And, I can't be more excited for it.
Absolutely. Very well said. And every time, not that it matters much now, given the state of where they are, every time things got rough for the Steelers, everyone said, "What about that Bills preseason game? What about that Bills preseason game?" And I'm aware there's a completely different quarterback for the Steelers. I'm aware so many dynamics of this season have changed. That was a hell of a showing from the Steelers offense. And on top of all the other changes, they're going to be playing in a blizzard with insane winds, cold temps, snow falling everywhere. So much so that KDKA, who I never worked for, I did work for a TV station in Pittsburgh, but never KDKA. They are really, at least for a while, allegedly, we're really pressing this narrative that the game might get moved to Cleveland, which at that stage, I don't want to call Cleveland a home game for Pittsburgh, but if you don't think the Yinzers are going to hop in the Yinzer mobile and drive to Cleveland, you're out of your mind. I think there'll be a good showing up in Buffalo, but Cleveland, I mean, that's further from Buffalo than Pittsburgh is at that stage.
Right.
That kind of got wiped down rather quickly, though. Doesn't sound like there's much legitimacy behind that. The Steelers reps have even said that's not true, according to a bunch of different reporters. But knowing our luck, we'll upload this episode, and like an hour later, it'll be official. But Cleveland, of all places, was weird to me. Doesn't
Yeah,
Syracuse play indoors?
they do at the JRM Wireless Dome, what used to be the Carrier Dome. Yeah, they do play indoors. But yeah, that whole situation, I looked at my phone at like 3 o'clock this afternoon, and they're like, "Oh yeah, the Steelers never said that this game." Steelers officials said there was no talks, or they were not even informed that this game had a chance to be moved to Cleveland. Then you got those reports from KDKA, from KDKA radio, which then was talked about by by the fans report of the radio station, and it was just a whole mess. And once again, Pittsburgh media gets under a bad rap of spreading misinformation for the second straight week. But yeah, what a time to be alive in Pittsburgh once again. Pittsburgh
What a
media.
time. I love
Yeah.
the fan too. It's just
Oh
crazy how
yeah.
sometimes those things just start to spiral.
Right.
But yeah, anyway, you're not here to hear about weather. You're not, I don't think anyway. You're not here to talk about games changing locations. You're here to listen to two guys, two average Joes, talk about what could happen here in this Steelers and Bills game, a game that you can try as much as you want to unpack it, and I think there's a pretty good chance we're nowhere close to what actually happens in this one. There's a lot of different arguments to be made about it, a lot of different results, and we might not hit either of them accurately. But let's start with the obvious, and that's kind of the Steelers' attitude going into this thing. A couple of years ago, they played the Chiefs, and I know Ben took some flack for it, but he basically said, this game no one expects us to win. Let's go in there and see what happens. If they don't think we're gonna win, then oh darn, I guess they don't think we're gonna win. So let's just go and have fun. And it kind of was off-putting for someone who was going for their last ride in the NFL, but it didn't go well either. So I guess that wasn't the right approach to take for the old gunslinger. But I digress. Now we're hearing that from Alan Saunders, at least of Steelers Now, that the energy in Pittsburgh good. And I don't see why it wouldn't be. You're getting some guys back. You're getting Roberts. You're getting Fitzpatrick. Sounds like even with Watt gone, there's a lot of faith in Herbig and Highsmith. So seems like the team's kind of rallying around itself, rallying around Mason Rudolph, and kind of having this "why not us" attitude, where they're not going into this game saying no one thinks we're going to win. They're going into this game with some newfound confidence, which I think they've kind of been playing with a noticeable swagger over this last little less than a month or so now. So, I mean, it seems like mentally they believe in themselves, which you might say sounds a little weird for a pro team not to believe in themselves. But this day and age, it's hard sometimes to block out the noise, especially the roller coaster. It sounds like underselling it, calling the Steelers season a roller coaster. More like that submersible that went to see the Titanic. It seemed like things imploded for a bit, and then somehow they resurfaced. But rest in peace. But anyway, it's been a heck of a season, and it's good to hear that despite a lot of the negative attention the Steelers are already getting, despite the ball not even being kicked off yet, they're remaining confident in themselves and think they have a real shot at this thing.
I mean, I would be too if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially after the way that they've played over the past 3 weeks, and especially going into the game in Buffalo with all of the weather that's going to be affected. 65-mile-per-hour wind gusts is what was put in the weather report this week when they came out with that winter weather advisory out in Buffalo. So 65-mile-an-hour gusts. So it's going to be it's playing right into the Steelers' hands, really, when you look at how they've been playing over the past several weeks, obviously with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren running the football 155 last week against the Ravens, 202 yards on the ground against Seattle. You're playing right into the Steelers' straight. That offensive line has really gelled together over these past 3 weeks and have really it's really bode well for the Steelers' rushing attack. And yeah, you're just playing right into the Steelers' strengths there with those two guys that have been integral parts to the Steelers' offense over the past couple of weeks. And so you're playing right into the Steelers' strength right there. And all that running's just going to open up a passing lane or two for Mason Rudolph. So you're really looking at, a classic Steelers football game and the way that they want to attack and the way that they want to play. So, it's going to be a really, really interesting matchup to see how they go about that. And just a lot of confidence. You're riding a 3-game win streak after basically all hope was lost. Kenny Pickett goes down against the Cardinals. You drop a game to a 3-win Cardinals team at the time. Then you lose to a dreadful New England Patriots team on Thursday night after dropping. So you drop back-to-back games against teams with losing records. But this Steelers team, especially against teams above 500 and against playoff teams this year, they have been very, very good. They have been solid against the teams that they should have no business in competing against, and they've sucked against all of the teams that have poor records. I think it was like 8-5 against teams that are above 500. They were 5-1 against teams in their division that were the AFC North was above 500. I think for the first time since like 19 or any NFL division was above 5. All teams were above 500 since like the 1930s or something like that. So they've played good football against good teams. So really, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers and you're in that locker room right now, why wouldn't you be excited? And you're not like, oh, we're not expected to be here. They expected themselves to be here. Now it's all about if you can stick to your game plan that's worked for you, especially over the course of this past month, and can you execute it in the conditions that you're walking into on Sunday, that's going to be the story. And, obviously you have TJ Watt missing with his sprained MCL. He'll be out for the next couple of weeks. They're without him. It's going to be a big task for Nick Herbig to step up. But you obviously gain some guys as well, like Landon Robinson, Nick, like you said. Minkah Fitzpatrick will look to make his return this week. So even though you lose some people, and Watt is a huge blow, you got some pieces returning, which could make some things interesting, even though the Steelers are 10-point dogs in this game.
Mm-hmm. And the Bills have some injuries themselves. We were talking to the injury report with each other beforehand. A lot on the defensive side of things. Looks like there might be a bug going around too. A few guys out with just illness and whatnot. And we're not going to sit here and speculate on the status of all of those guys this game because we don't have our ears to the ground as much as we do with the Steelers, following all of their reporters and their children on Twitter to see the latest update. But I mean, it's something to keep an eye on if this Bills team is missing any pieces on the defense. But kind of as you alluded to, it sounds like this game's going to be won on the ground, and that could really play into the Steelers' favor. Obviously, last week playing in a monsoon, I don't know how the people in the stands were doing it. All the respect in the world to them because that did not look fun, and everyone was throwing a hissy fit on about ESPN's coverage and the wet camera, uh, which was wild to me. I get that it's you should be wiping it off quite frequently, but it was coming down. So I think you could deal with the smudge on your screen for a couple seconds at a time. But anyway, Jalen Warren had some trouble holding onto the ball. We saw Mason Rudolph have some trouble holding onto the ball. So we're at the point that even though he had thrown like 2 incompletions the entire game, people wanted him yanked because he was having trouble holding the snaps, which was a take. It was a take to want to pull Mason and put in Kenny Pickett in the middle of a monsoon, as I referred to it earlier, in a game where you basically need to win for your playoff chances to still exist. That was a thought, an interesting one to say the least, about the Twitter coaches, which I play Twitter coach sometimes too, but usually my ideas aren't that bad. I will say they're not all great, but they're rarely ever that bad. But yeah, I mean, they seem to be honed in with the Warren Najee connection. It's something I've shouted from the mountains. Go tell it on the mountain. Just like Christmas time, they seem homed in. They seem like they've got it figured out. This game's going to, I think, run through Najee Harris and what he can do. And that kind of excites me because last week was promising. As you said, Ethan, 2 weeks ago was really good for both backs. I'm excited. I'm not saying I'm totally buying into it. Don't be surprised if Mason has to make some big throws, which obviously kind of goes without being said. But, in that win, Josh Allen and Mason Rudolph, they both zipped that ball. And I think if there's any quarterbacks who are going to try to tamper with the wind a bit, I think both of them can do it not great, but in a way where they can be successful more than I think people might expect them to be. That being said, if it is, I haven't seen the wind speeds. I just know it's supposed to be crazy. If it's 60 miles an hour, then maybe that point's kind of null and void. But yeah, it's going to be a ground game, and it's going to be, as you mentioned as well, it's going to be very AFC North like. It's just going to be gritty. It's going to be dirty. And another point you mentioned, the Steelers are really good, minus like 2 or 3 games this year, at keeping it close. And the Steelers, and again, Buffalo's at home. Buffalo is used to, sometimes these conditions. But the Steelers are a very dangerous foe to have when the conditions are like this because Pittsburgh is used to playing in crappy weather too historically. And I think they are going to be a very big challenge to the Bills. And I hope the Bills are giving the Steelers the respect that they deserve. And I'm not saying the Steelers are guaranteed to shock the world. I wouldn't be surprised if they go in there and lose by 2 or 3 possessions. But I mean, on paper, the Steelers are kind of a, hey, don't sleep on these guys' opponent for the Bills. They're going to go in there, and I think they can make this game very ugly and very close. And we know how they find a way to win those games, even if it comes down to the Bills being at the 5-yard line, knocking on heaven's door with 3 seconds left, and the Steelers need to make a play without their best defensive player on the field. I still think the ball or the strategy might favor the Steelers in that sense. So, going to be interesting. Going to be interesting, Ethan.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think, yeah, like we've mentioned, it's all about that rushing attack on the offensive side and just playing to your strengths there. And I said it last week. I'll say it again this week. It's going to be who plays clean football. Who gets that first takeaway? Who gets the takeaway in that second half of play? Because that first takeaway in that second half, it's going to be a real deciding factor if it happens on either side on who will get the upper hand and come away with this game. We've seen the Steelers all year make these crucial plays in the second half, and we saw it last week against the Ravens, picking up that loose fumble, then getting in for the score and really taking over that game from there. So it's going to be if the Steelers can make another big splash play in the second half, like they have been all season long, which have put them in great situations to win, I think they're in really good shape. And I think to your point, Nick, back to Mason Rudolph and people calling for Kenny Pickett to come in after last week's game. Man only threw 2 incompletions in that entire game. In the conditions that he was in, 2 incompletions, threw for over $150, which, I mean, for the conditions that he played in, is pretty favorable and pretty good. So
Even if
I
one
think,
of the
right,
catches went for 71 yards.
right, yeah, exactly. But still, like under the conditions, he was 18 for 20 in that game. So it was there. Obviously, it wasn't the gaudy numbers that he had 3 weeks ago against Cincinnati, where he threw for 284, or against the Seahawks a week later, where he threw for 266. Obviously, those numbers weren't there due to the conditions that he was playing in, but it was still a very solid game by Mason. And even though he had that terrible, terrible drive at the end of the first half of play, there wasn't really too much to complain about with the way that offense was executed and that offense did roll. So it's just going to be all about, once again, just staying within themselves, not trying to do too much offensively and just sticking to what their game has done for them and how they have worked on that offensive side of the ball over the course of this past month. And I think they're going to be in good shape.
This is where the Steelers' play calling all year, I think, might kind of benefit them, assuming it's not, jar-headed decisions, but that cheeky little shit, just throwing slants, throwing little screens. You don't want to be taking too many shots downfield unless you absolutely have to, with the conditions being the way that they are. But I mean, if you just chip away, sometimes those things turn into big plays. We've seen Pickens do it. We saw Johnson do it last week. Johnson's touchdown went from a sizable gain to a 71-yard touchdown. This is the way the Steelers have played. And like I said, you just kind of hope the play calling is a little more coherent as opposed to them doing questionable things. But that not flashy, just chip away at it offense, I think this kind of favors the Steelers because they're used to that. They're used to not making splash plays, which is never something you really think you want to brag about. But playing in those conditions, I think it kind of suits their game well. And Josh Allen is one of my favorite players in the entire NFL. But did we forget last year? Did we forget what happened in the first round of the playoffs? It makes me sick just thinking about it. Did we forget about the first round of the playoffs last year when Josh Allen single-handedly almost handed the game to the Miami Dolphins with some of the most boneheaded turnovers he could have had? And the Dolphins quarterback in that game wasn't Tua. Skylar Thompson. So we've seen it before. We've seen Josh Allen. You've seen the Trump video. The lights, turn them off. I'm not saying he's not ready for the moment, but I am saying Josh Allen likes to play what I like to call hero ball, where he's not going to give up on the play. And when it works out for him, it's great. And when it doesn't work out for him, it's really ugly. And he makes some really bad decisions trying to make something spectacular happen. And then with the Steelers, their defense, getting guys back, already kind of making life hell in certain moments these last couple of weeks. It seems like they're on the up and up in terms of mood. Seems like that defense is getting some swagger back, and now it's getting some identity back too. That could be crucial in this game. And all it takes is one or two of those plays to completely flip this script. And I think Josh Allen, I'm not again trying to say that, they're trash or anything along those lines, or it's totally going to be a Steelers game and it's their game to lose. No. But what I am saying is you're pretty confident if they're going to win a first round game in the playoffs here, that Josh Allen's the guy you want under center for the other team. And again, no discredit to Josh Allen. It's just he's guilty of trying to do too much. And I think the Steelers have built a brand of football off of punishing, quarterbacks and making them pay when they try to be the hero a little too much.
Absolutely. I think, that was very well said. And, anything can happen now. Obviously, the Steelers have a tough task going into Orchard Park and trying to pull off an upset that not a lot of people expect them to do. But I think, like we've mentioned, the way that they've played and the way that their defense is run and how they have operated over the course of the season and the pieces that they are getting back, even though they're losing TJ Watt up front, you're still gaining a lot of pieces back in the secondary with Micah Fitzpatrick. Pat Peterson could probably go back to his natural position. But even though Pat Peterson never played safety in his career, he still held up very well back there in the secondary and is even thinking about extending his playing career after this season because of that opportunity that he got playing safety. So I think just the way that this Steelers team has operated, I know Mike Tomlin said after the game on last Saturday, he said off the couch. That's kind of like their motto now, is just bringing guys off the couch like the Cleveland Browns did with Joe Flacco, and you see how he's played. So just get the guys that you have no idea like who they are coming off the couch and just stepping up and making plays in big time games. You saw Miles Jack last week making a big play, and you just see the plays that he made over the course of the past 2 weeks that he's been in, and just the guys that have been able to step up and rise to the occasion. Is just something that you really want to see if you are the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, because in the playoffs, it's always that next man up mentality, and especially with how the Steelers defense has been completely depleted over these past several weeks. Just to see the guys that have stepped up gives the Steelers some hope that even though we've got TJ Watt out, we still have guys that can step up and fill that void. I'm not saying they're going to put up TJ Watt like numbers on Sunday, but it's definitely going to give them a shot with the guys that they still have and the guys that they have left to shovel into that coal tank and move that train right through Buffalo.
The coal train.
I
thought that was in the Bronx these days, but I guess not.
I know.
I thought he shipped elsewhere. But Ethan, it's that time. It's time for you to tell me what's going to happen in this one.
Oh boy, here we go. Yeah, I think this game, it's going to be a low-scoring affair. I think you're going to see pretty much the same score line like we did in Baltimore. It's going to be very close, very tight, one-possession game. I haven't bet against the Steelers, I think, for the past 3 weeks, and I'm not going to do it again here in the playoffs. I think the Steelers take this one 17-14 on the road. They get a touchdown. They trail 14-10 late in the fourth quarter. They put a drive together off of a turnover, and Najee Harris punches it into the end zone. Steelers win and move on to the AFC divisional round against the B. Moore Ravens.
Wow.
For their third matchup of the season, and go into Baltimore once again for the second time in 3 weeks. And so, yeah, I have the Steelers winning this one 17-14.
Can you imagine? They're Baltimore's kryptonite. Well, Lamar's kryptonite.
Yeah, I know, right?
So far. Can you imagine if they somehow win this game and then win against the Ravens and end up in the national champion? That's the wrong game. They're not playing Harbaugh. Well, not that Harbaugh. Can you imagine they end up with the AFC Championship? Oh my God!
I know that would be just like this. Yeah, the story of all ages, right there.
That would have to be a huge money line, no matter who they play next.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, we've talked about how hot the Steelers have been. You got to talk about how hot the Bills have been. I mean, ever since the how do I say this? The story about Sean McDermott that came out, ever since then, which might have been not the situation itself is funny, but the fact that ever since that leaked, the Bills have just been playing out of their minds. Like Ethan said, some of it's been pretty, some of it's been ugly, but they have been winning, and they've basically been in a must-win mode for over a month now, and they have done it. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting the timeline of that all. But Sean McDermott went from this guy's definitely going to get fired to he's got this team as potentially one of the most dangerous teams entering this playoff. Uh, James Cook had that huge game against Dallas. Josh Allen's very mobile. They have Leonard Fournette on the team too, which I don't think anyone remembers hardly ever. But they have a good group of guys out there who can run this ball and match or do better than Pittsburgh's running back core there. And I'd like to think Mason Rudolph's not as mobile as Josh Allen. Hot take. Just kidding. That's not a hot take at all. So, I mean, I just wanted to give the Bills their flowers there. And I was all set to do this big gimmick about picking the Steelers, but you've already picked them. So now I can't make us both look like homers because that's just absolutely asinine. I think this can be kind of vague, and I don't mean for it to be like I'm afraid to pick an opinion. This is how I think the game's going to go because of the conditions. I think whoever's going to get the ball first, get the kickoff, whatever. I think they're going to turn the ball over almost immediately. I think there's going to be that really weird feeling out period of what you can do in the conditions. So I think whoever gets the ball first makes a turnover deep in their own end, and there's almost a touchdown for the other team right off the bat. And then I think they're very careful the next drive, and both after that the game gets painful to watch because both teams are a little too afraid to really be doing anything. I think Buffalo makes a huge play at some point late first quarter, early second quarter. Regardless of if that puts them up by 2 touchdowns or ties the game, I don't know because I'm not sure who's getting the ball first yet. I think there's going to be another huge momentum swing in the second half, mid to late third quarter, and I think it's going to be the Steelers with that momentum swing. And then I think it's going to come down to who can make a dinky little field goal at the end there or get close enough to run a prayer of a touchdown play. I think it's low scoring. I got this one ending 16-13 in favor of the Bills, solely because if we do have any new listeners, we can't make them think that we're just typical Yinzers, which there's nothing wrong with that to our Pittsburgh fan group. Yep. But we pride ourselves as men of faith, and there's a drive to left field by no. But yeah, I think Buffalo takes this one, and I think Pittsburgh makes it close. But ultimately, I think the Bills have been long overdue. I think they've been Super Bowl favorites for basically the past 3-ish years now. I've predicted them to be in the Super Bowl before these past couple of years, at least once or twice. And with how hot they are coming into the playoffs, I think this is the year they could really make the run. They just beat Miami, who granted has struggled against some of the better teams this year. But I think Buffalo is going to make a decent run, and I think unfortunately it starts for the Steelers. But don't be surprised if this game is painful to watch and it's turnovers galore. But yeah, I got Buffalo walking away with this one. And now it's time for Last Call, sponsored by Rogue Energy. All kinds of great flavors. Punt the coffee out the window, grab some Rogue Energy, hit the link in the description for more. Ethan, I kind of dropped this on you. I don't even know if I have anything for Last Call. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I'll throw this at the wall here. Last week we talked about Pirates Fest and all the debacles that were going on there. And it turned out to be a good event. I wasn't there. I will be the first one to say I was not at Pirates Fest, but fans were able to ask their questions to the Pirates brass and in-person questions while they did the online forum questions as well. But fans were able to ask their questions. Kiddies were able to get their autographs. Everyone was hunky-dory, and everyone was making out Pirates Fest to be the end-all be-all, and everyone was all up in a uproar and all uptight about it, but it turned out to be a very, very good event. Had some players surprising the children as they were asking some questions during Pirates Fest. So that was a nice little touch there for the fan experience as well. So overall, a nice event after all the uproar and everyone that was up in arms last week against about the autographs and the fan questions to Pirates general management, which honestly, I think from reading some of the questions that were asked at Pirates Fest, I think it was fair. Obviously, the answers were not straight. They were very straight answers and not the answers that a lot of fans were looking for. But I do give the Pirates front office credit for allowing the fans to voice their opinion to them
Mhm.
in that scenario. So
Yeah,
overall, yeah.
I looked pretty good from what I saw. It looked like, as you said, some of the questions were surprising. Saw some very strange autographs in the mystery bags.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure if you're a
forgot.
Twitter
Yeah.
user, you saw some Daniel Vogelback, some Heath
Mm-hmm.
Hembreys floating around out there, which was, I mean, in my opinion,
Rodolfo Castro. Yep.
I'd be pretty stoked if I got a gift in Gope baseball at Pirate
Uh
Fest like 6 years after he played. I'd be like, "This is sick."
huh.
Would I rather it be someone who's currently on the team? Sure, but, like, who else is gonna be able to say they have one of those? So, I guess that's just, a matter of opinion, and I get if you go to an event like that, you want some stuff from the actual current team. I don't think that's too much of an ask, but I guess I'm just a weirdo thinking that I would be really ecstatic about Travis Snyder autographed lunchbox or something. But yeah, uh, seemed like quite the event. I'm going to talk about something that I never thought I'd do in a sentimental tone, and that's what the hell has happened over the last 48 hours in terms of coach retirements or departures, I guess. Pete Carroll, who I hated as a kid, but grew to be like, oh, he's a nice old guy on the Seahawks and he's got a really fun attitude. And I've always liked what he said in interviews. Nick Saban, who I hated Alabama. Both those guys crushed my dreams as a Notre Dame fan, by the way, at different points in my adolescence. I hated both of them, but I was like, oh man, he does the Aflac commercials. He's got really good messages about like sticking up for his kids and what by kids I mean his players, all kinds of different clips floating around of how they're supposed to treat these guys and just so many like forward thinking things that he has said. Obviously there's the pretty infamous Henry Ruggs thing, which we won't get into all the Henry Ruggs stuff, but talking about how you need people to tell you no and whatnot. There's other things about when guys get in legal trouble, how everyone wants them to throw them to the curb. And Nick Saban says, why would you rather have them back on the street than in a program where they can, succeed and stay off the street and out of things like that. And just other things of that nature that Nick Saban said that I go, wow, that's the right mindset to have. And then the one that was really confusing to me was I woke up this morning and saw Bill Belichick was leaving the Patriots. And I should have jumped for joy and yelled hooray and yippee, but instead I just got kind of sad, not because I'm the biggest Bill Belichick fan in the world. Again, his interviews are usually pretty funny, but when you're responsible for that much childhood trauma, it's hard for me to be in your corner. But it was kind of sad seeing the old head kind of walk out the door there. And I don't know if it was on his terms or not. I didn't watch the press conference. He made a really good Tim Tebow joke in the only clip I did see, but just weird. I'm getting old and it makes me sad. And good luck to Buffalo when they take on the longest tenured head coach currently in the NFL and Mike Tomlin, which ruined my day. Ethan, give a thought real quick. I want to grab something that's right over my shoulder here.
Yeah, no, you're good, Nick. Yeah, Bill Belichick. Just letting the old man go. It was sad. It was really sad because he's an old man now, and just to see, obviously, Bill Belichick's not one for all the theatrics and everything like that, but just I don't know. He's very monotone, and he was like that again today. But it just seems like the life was sucked out of him during
Mhm.
that press
You
conference.
look tired.
Yeah. And will he go on to coach somewhere else? Yeah, because it seems like he's still going to continue to coach elsewhere. I'm interested to see how that all pans out. And as for Nick Saban, man, what a career! I mean, you might as well make this a national holiday, just with all of the three. I mean, really, like the big three. Like
Mhm.
Pete Carroll, with all the history that he's had, and you had Saban yesterday, and then Bill Belichick, just back to back to back, just major blows, and really just capping off an era of historic coaches.
I hope Vrabel takes the Patriots job.
He seems
That'd be
destined for that.
that'd be
Yeah,
cool. This seems like it makes sense. I've always liked
yeah.
Vrabel, and there's a lot of issues with the Titans, and I don't really know if he was the one issue that they needed to address right away. But speaking of the Titans, they're little division rivals down there in Jacksonville. And I saw this clip way too many times with the whole terrible towel thing. And I think it's kind of funny how offended people got about it. But that being said, I hope you see this in your dreams. Hope you see this in your dreams, Jacksonville. Sleep tight. Have fun on your couch watching everyone else play this weekend. Hope everyone enjoys first week of the playoffs. Depending on what happens and what schedules look like, might try to go live after the Steelers game, whether it's 10 minutes after the game ends or 6 hours after the game ends because it's a 1:00 game. Might try to go live, get some instant thoughts. We'll see how everyone's schedules line up. I'm not going to promise that, but definitely something I like to do. Get that instant reaction to what we saw. But anyway, this has been Stranded in Pittsburgh, a NFL playoff Steelers Bills game at least preview. Didn't preview the whole thing. That would have been a lot longer. But yeah, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Take care of yourselves. And if you're going to brave any of the elements this weekend, anywhere you go, hope you stay safe because we don't have that many listeners, so we need you to be okay. We need you to stay safe and stay well. We'll see you next time.